I'm Jordan Zachary, and I'm the host and editor and producer. I don't know, the guy behind Progress Report. And I'm here with really excited Ben Gruber, who is he's running for state assembly in Wisconsin. And I launched a website a bunch of months ago, trying to look at different legislatures where it could flip the Democrats, and also trying to understand who the good candidates and interesting candidates and pro worker candidates are. And Ben hit all those notes. Union member, long time. So you can see in his background, he's got pro union, pro worker, pro freedom, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But excited to have him here. He's running in the 51st district in Wisconsin. Ben, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I guess first of all, it's southern Wisconsin. Tell me a little bit about yourself and the district.
Yeah. So I live, and I'm streaming today from the basement of the house I grew up in. If I drove east, it takes me about 45 minutes to get to Madison. From my house to the other end of my assembly district, of which there's 99 in the state of Wisconsin, if I left my house, it takes me an hour and 10 minutes to get to the other corner of it, and I
Oh,
go
well.
through one stoplight. So it's pretty rural.
Yeah,
Uh,
one stoplight.
yeah. Uh, so it's a big district, and I live about 15 minutes away from a small town where I went to elementary school. That town's got about 550 people in it. I
Oh,
moved back to this house in 2019. Uh, and that was the year after they closed their elementary school, after 3 failed school referendums, which is, we'll put a pin in that for sure and come back to a
yeah.
big part of why I'm running. It's one of the most agriculture dependent districts in the state. It's also the district in the state that has time and again the most school referendums, which are operating referendums. I know we have, here in Wisconsin, we understand very much what that means these days, but maybe around the country, people don't. Every year, we're asking property taxpayers to go to the ballot and vote additional funding just to keep the lights on at our schools,
So
operating expenses. Um, we have almost all of our counties have projected declines in population, except for one, and that's Lafayette County, and that is entirely because of Hispanic migration.
mm,
They're actually the only county that grows, and that population's coming in large part because we have significant large dairy and dairy processing workforce there. So, yeah, that's the district itself is 2 counties and some change. So we get 2 full counties and then a little bit of small parts of 2 other counties.
got it, got it. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like you said, you were running for this in part because of school referendums. I know there's a lot of Wisconsin's had trouble with school funding issues. So, tell us about yourself, your background, and why you decided to run. I guess in addition to the school funding stuff that we just discussed.
Yeah. So here in rural Wisconsin, I think there's a perception that it's pretty Republican. And sometimes that's true. That's how I grew up. I don't hide it. Like I've always considered myself fiercely independent, but I was a functional Republican until about 2011.
Mm,
And then full stop in 2016.
yeah.
I started out of high school. I joined my local fire and EMS as a volunteer. Was just kind of a public service thing. I worked in the trades. I was a welder and did some framing carpentry and construction. And then purely by accident, I got into fire and EMS as a career and
Mm,
became an IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, full-time firefighter. Always stayed here in Wisconsin, but moved around a little bit. Was a firefighter paramedic, local 311 and local 487 here in Wisconsin. And I was very casual union member. I paid my dues. I didn't hate it. I didn't think much of it. Paid my dues, and I showed up to the one union meeting every year where there was free beer. Um, 2011 was pretty pivotal here in Wisconsin. That was
right.
Scott Walker and Act 10, the elimination of public sector collective bargaining.
Yes.
At the time, I was relatively aloof to what was happening.
Mhm.
I saw it. I'm pretty sure I probably had voted for Scott Walker. I don't remember if I showed up to vote then or not. I was
Sure.
young and disengaged. But I know when the protests started happening and collective bargaining got taken from teachers and essentially every public worker except for firefighters and police officers, I went, I don't know if this is what I want. I
Yeah.
started to question, like, what are my values? What do I actually value? Instead of like, what does my dad say? My dad's a Republican, so I should be a Republican.
Right.
I actually started to like evaluate what I believed in, what I thought was right. And then 4 or 5 years into that journey, came Donald Trump. And I said, I cannot be part of this. Like
Right.
I don't know that I'm ready to call myself a Democrat or something else, but I'm not a Republican. I will not have part of that. And even then, I still was relatively disengaged. I remember that cycle I voted for Gary Johnson from a third party.
Okay.
Or after the
President.
Bushes, I was like, I don't want another legacy. I don't want political legacies. I just want good people to do good things. And to me, Hillary Clinton was just a political legacy.
Yeah.
Uh, in hindsight, that's one that I would have taken, given the alternative, but it is what
I
it
don't think
is.
anyone expected it to turn out the way it did.
I think a lot of people did. There was a lot
Yeah.
of people who told us, right? A lot of people said that. And
That he would
listen,
win.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then I left my job as a full-time firefighter. Gosh, I'm trying to think exactly what year it is. It was probably around 2015. Uh, I had the opportunity to be a part-time stay-at-home dad. So I did that, and I had a small farm in central Wisconsin. It was the farm my wife grew up on, even more rural than where I live now. And we raised some beef cows, and we had an organic grass-fed beef operation for about 5 years. And unfortunately, she told me I had to go back to work, that I'd lost all the money I was allowed to playing farmer. So I took a full-time job as a conservation warden with the DNR, which is a conservation law enforcement role here in Wisconsin, and it was great. I loved it. And then it was in 2020, after I worked for him a few years part time, I went back to a full time role, and I had to go through a recruit academy again. And during that academy, we had one supervisor in particular who was a pretty brutal. He was sexist. He made some really disparaging comments about women, and that was during George Floyd protests also.
Mm.
And he made some really racist comments. And I called him out on it. And I went to another supervisor. I was like, "Hey, like this shit's got to stop.
Yeah.
Uh, like that's not okay." And I had been warned. They're like, "Hey, if you speak up, you're a probationary employee. They'll fire you." It's like, "No, no way. That's not how the world works." So I reported it, and they were right. Almost immediately, I got fired for
Yeah.
like 3 retaliatory purposes. They said I had the wrong patches on my uniform, which they had issued. Yeah. But I was in a spot where, right, I was, I had a lot of life experience. And thanks to my wife, I was in a spot where I didn't have to return to work the next day. I wasn't desperate. So I said, well, I'm not going to take this. Went and talked to a labor attorney, and he said, oh, yeah, it's absolutely retaliatory. And to make a long story short, the DNR, it basically said when we called and outlined the facts, they're like, well, tell us how much money you want for a settlement. I said, well, I don't want a settlement. I want my job back. Uh, So much to their disappointment, that was what they had to do, is they gave me my job back.
That's
He
wild. It's so rare that people are able to fight back or have the means to do it, and uh, they just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess yeah. They assume no one will fight back when you do
right,
it.
and I found out later that, this is a well-used playbook, right? Over and over and over again, and, um, so yeah, I got my job back, and I kept my head down for a little bit, just kinda took stock and recovered and got my breath, and, uh it was in March of 2023. Nothing had changed for the positive, really. In fact, it had gotten worse, where several other people were like, hey, something's got to change. We all love this conservation role that we do, and the good people are getting run out and the bad people are rising to the top. So a couple of guys called and they said, hey, we'd like to talk about getting our union back,
Mm.
quote, back. Would you meet us out at the bar and let's see what we can do? So, for context for people listening, in 2011, collective bargaining was stripped from all public employees except for firefighters and law enforcement in the state of Wisconsin.
Huge protest, right? People were
Huge.
packing the Capitol. It was,
Yep.
I mean, Wisconsin's like one of the capitals of unionism in the United States.
Yep.
So it was a huge big deal.
Yeah, AFSCME, the Public Sector Union, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, was born in Wisconsin. Local one still here in Dane County. Uh, so there's all kinds of context there. There's several books. They call it the Wisconsin Uprising. There was 100,000 people shortly
Yeah.
after protesting at the Capitol, occupied overnight. It's widely believed to have inspired the Occupy Wall Street movement, and it was in a similar timeline with the Arab Uprising,
Yeah.
and both were both were widely attributed, at least in their disorganized organization, to have been born via social media. Right? These were
Hmm.
the original Twitter protests where people were coming out because of Twitter.
Yeah.
Uh,
Streaming it. I remember that. And it's really interesting that it provided you the jumping off point politically, but we'll get back to that.
Very interesting. Uh, so this is important. Conservation wardens in Wisconsin are law enforcement officers, have arrest credentials, carry a gun and a badge, go through Department of Justice training, everything that every other law enforcement officer in Wisconsin has. But we primarily do conservation law, polluters and poachers.
Yeah.
Our union did not endorse Scott Walker in 2011, which was a rarity among the police and fire unions. He had come from the
Mm.
city of Milwaukee, where when he defunded a lot of the locals, a lot of municipal employees there, he was smart in his divide and conquer role. He kept law enforcement and fire on his good side. Very
I think
intentional.
DeSantis is doing the same thing in Florida.
Divide and conquer.
Yep.
Uh, but when he did it, he kept collective bargaining for all law enforcement except for Capitol Police, University of Wisconsin Police, and the DNR Conservation Wardens. So
So
we
specific.
lost. Yeah, well, those are the unions that didn't endorse Scott Walker.
Hmm. Vindictive guy.
Yeah, and this is all really well outlined in our court case, which we're coming to.
Okay.
So March of 2023, I get together with three buddies in a bar, and they said, "Hey, we think you should be our union president." And I said no, and they bought me a beer and asked again, and I said no. Eventually, they bought a pitcher of beer and asked, and I finally said yes, because that's how we got here. Uh, I was reluctant, but really it was because I was in a position where I felt like I could stand up. I had already stood up, and I felt relatively empowered to take that and use my voice to stand up for other people. So I said, sure. I called our executive director at the state union. I said, hey, I'm the new president of Local 1215. Send me a membership roster. Uh, he did. There were 6 names on it. And 3 of those guys had been retired for over 6 months and just didn't cancel their dues payment.
Oh wow! So everyone had opted out of the dues because they couldn't, they didn't have to pay them, right? Because of those.
We
Yeah.
effectively did not have a local. Uh,
Wow.
it existed on paper basically as a placeholder until this moment.
Right.
That day in the bar, when I agreed by default by a vote of the 4 active members that were present voted me in as president, and I signed up myself. Like, I hadn't been paying dues. Nobody had ever come and talked. We didn't
Oh wow.
realize that there was an active local
Yeah.
because there
Just
wasn't.
shriveled. Just
Yeah.
shriveled. Right.
So within 3 months, we built it up to 50 people, which is I thought was really impressive because
Yeah.
geographically, we're spread all across the state, 72 counties, 180-ish roughly target members. So it's very small, and to add 50 people in that short of time, we thought was really impressive. But then
Yeah.
within 6 months, we had it just shy of 100, and we really were getting a lot of attention in a state where union density and union membership had rapidly declined.
Yeah.
There was no union that was growing like ours.
How did you get, I mean, a lot of times with whether it's right to work, they call it, the people will opt out of paying dues because they don't feel like they're getting, what they should out of a union because the unions have been depowered basically, like it's a whole cascading thing. But so how do you get people when you can't negotiate, you can't collectively bargain right now or at the time? Um, and they haven't been paying dues, and the union hasn't really been around. How do you get them to not only say yes, I will sign up, but I will also pay dues? I mean, that's an impressive thing in and of itself.
Yeah. What we did was I just identified geographically because we had to cover the whole state, right? We don't have a single work site, which it made it immensely more difficult. We identified somebody geographically in every one of the four sectors of the state, and we made them our union stewards and said, "Hey, here, your job is simply to let people know it's okay to join the union. That we'll stand up for them." And then we started picking fights,
Mm,
and it was filing grievances, it was filing lawsuits, discrimination lawsuits. We let it rip. There was no injustice that we wouldn't challenge and stand up for,
cool.
and we did that with 7 members.
Yeah,
And then we had 10, and then we had 12, and, people wanted to be part of it. When they saw that somebody was
cool.
gonna stand up and fight back, they were like, "I wanna be part of that. I didn't want my name to be kept out of the public for now. I don't want the
Right.
boss to know, but sign me up. As long as you
Yeah.
can tell me that, that they don't that management doesn't have access to this list, we're in." So,
Right. That's amazing.
the next thing that we did, was along with a couple other unions in the state, uh, we filed a lawsuit, uh, challenging Act 10, which is the budget repair bill that Scott Walker did that eliminated collective bargaining for public employees.
Hmm.
And the basis of our filing was that the state has an equal protection clause. And when they carved out DNR conservation wardens, who are active law enforcement officers, but did not do the same to all other law enforcement in the state, was a violation of the state's equal protection clause.
Hmm.
And the circuit court judge looked at it and said, absolutely. So we won almost all aspects of our lawsuit at the circuit court level. The judge said, Act 10 is null and void as it relates to collective bargaining. That immediately was appealed to appellate court where it languishes currently. Uh,
Right.
Undoubtedly will go to the state Supreme Court.
Which, so where is it right now? Because I know, like, so do you still not have collective bargaining rights? Because obviously the state supreme court has changed a lot since this first passed. So, where does it stand right now?
Uh, it's this The ruling has been stayed pending appeal. So we do not have collective bargaining rights. It's sitting in appellate court in Wisconsin. We have circuit court, appellate court, and Supreme Court. So it's sitting
Hmm.
in appellate court, and the Republican supermajority, when they had a trifecta here, they actually gerrymandered the courts. So two
Mm,
things that uh, the legislature is able to choose which appellate court they go to, whereas us common folks, your appellate court is the district in which your circuit court's in. But they're
yeah,
able to choose their appellate court, so they're able to go to the most conservative one, and that's where it languishes down in Waukesha Appellate Court. The other thing that the legislature did during that time was they made it, when they stripped an incoming Democratic governor of his powers, they also made it so the legislature did not have to use the state attorney general to defend their laws. They're able to go out and hire private counsel. So our
right.
Republican legislature has spent hundreds of millions of dollars defending bad laws of taxpayer money, while the attorney general just sits on the sideline. Uh, so
That's the
that
Democrat attorney general. Yeah.
Correct. Just so many abuses of power, while they had that very short trifecta, and it's really cost our state so much for so long. Gerrymandered the courts, stripping power from the attorney general, from the secretary of state, from the governor's office, all these last minute power grabs.
We're very
Uh,
thorough.
oh, very thorough. It's actually kind of impressive how effective they were.
Yeah. I get jealous of things like that, not because I think it's good, but like one party does it, and the other party, like I like the idea of good government, but it's also a bit of a I guess put downing tools or bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to say this recently. I feel like the Republican Party will use every bit of its power and consolidate all the power it can to make their own lives better. And
Mm,
the Democrat Party seems to be willing to do everything in its power to not make anybody's life worse.
yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, and it's a really good way of putting it. And so, Um, you are running as a Democrat, and so you guys do a great job with with the union stuff, trying to get back your collective bargaining rights. And then I know this is the redistricting. They redrew some maps in Wisconsin, which made a big difference. And then like, what gets you say, you know what, I'm actually going to run, and if we can't get this thing passed, I guess to a court, then I'm going to run for office and do it myself.
Yeah. It no different than any good organizing campaign, anger and hope, right? Like I'm pissed off that over and over again we're not getting better. When the opportunity exists, we continue to give corporate welfare to billionaires. And at the same time, we're closing our village police department and we can't staff our ambulance, and the water doesn't come out of the well, but we can't afford to dig a new well. And we're giving $2 million in corporate welfare to Meta and Microsoft. So I'm pissed off. Um, and then hope. Every good organizing drive, anger and hope. Like you have to make people believe that you can do better, and
Yeah,
I really believe that we can do better. I also think I'm uniquely positioned to be able to win this district. I have no like great personal desire to be in elected office. I didn't even want to be the union president. I stuck it out for 3 terms, but it's not an ambition. I'm doing it because I see it as a community service. I
yeah,
want to go do things that make my community's life better. And the incumbent hasn't done that. And I believe I'm uniquely positioned as somebody who has deep roots in this community. Like I've taught hunter safety to these people's kids, and I know what's going to happen. They're going to come out with the normal attack ads that every progressive is subject to. They're going to say
sure.
that I'm sure they're going to talk and try and say I want to ban guns. I teach people hunter safety. I work
Right.
in law enforcement. I carry a gun to work. Uh, anything that they can do to try and paint me as some kind of radical, they'll do, no doubt. But if I just want to make people's lives better, I want somebody to answer the call when your grandma needs an ambulance.
Sure.
I want somebody there to staff the ambulance. When we turn on the tap, we'd like to have clean water. We'd like to be able to drink our water. That's one of the big reasons people live in the country, right?
Sure.
We're 30
Pretty
miles
simple
away.
asks. It's
Say
like pretty simple asks, just functioning public services.
Yeah, well, I wanna keep the lights on in our schools. Like, I want public education. I want our tax dollars to go to public schools, not to private voucher schools. We've siphoned off over $1 billion in public school money and sent it to unaccountable private voucher schools. That
Yeah,
stuff's gotta stop. Um, and I've been in this community. I've when people have called 911 from as a volunteer EMT, I've been there to help them up. I've been there to take their grandma to the hospital. I've delivered some of their babies in the field. I've been there for some of them during the worst tragedies. I've gone to their kids' funerals. I drove 119 miles an hour to get to a reported school shooting and spent
yeah.
6 hours standing guard over 400 kids in a library. I've been there for this community, and it's what I'm here for.
It's really interesting because we spent a lot of time talking about like how can Democrats take resurge right in rural areas. And yeah, there's a lot of people talk about candidate profiles or different campaign strategies, but to me, and I think you're kind of emblematic of it, is like, and I'm just curious what you think, because I'm sure you get a lot of questions about being Democrat, but like being from the community, being like existing in it, it's not really about like politics so much as like being the politics is sort of like to the side of it. It seems like that's a little bit like a big part of it. So for you, like, the perception of Democrats, I don't know, it's like, not the world's reddest district, but it's a reddish district. Like what do people think? What do people think about you running as a Democrat? How do people respond to that? And how do you mitigate that?
Yeah. Um, Part of it is like it doesn't I don't ever bring it up. I show up and talk to people and I tell them how I want to make their life better. I want to make our life better. We talk about we talk about values and issues. I try not to I try not to bring politics, especially the partisan party part into it until they ask. And I make them ask. And they do. Some
Mhm.
of them never do. Here in Wisconsin, like people value the independent voter, and a lot of times they're not independent. They're functionally Democrats or functionally Republicans, but they're never going to admit that I'm an independent.
Right.
Uh, so here, like we just start the conversation about the things that our community needs, and certainly there are very partisan people. I had two of them today. I knocked, I don't know, 70 or 80 doors today. I had two people say, "If you're a Democrat, get out of here." Okay, I said, I'm not a Democrat. I said, running as a Democrat, there'll be a D next to my name. And this guy said, that's enough for me. Get out. Okay, thank you for your time.
Oh,
I'm not going to change that guy's mind.
yeah.
Uh, that's pretty indoctrinated. And that's fine. Like, I don't have to change everybody's mind. But I tell him on the way out the door, I said, hey, when I'm in office, this conversation doesn't mean that I won't work for you. Like, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and that's how we win people. It's rather than Rather than asking people to believe in the Democrat Party again, we need Democrats who are gonna go get shit done and show people why they should be believed in.
Sure.
Uh, no different than when I took over as union president, I didn't go ask 100 people to give me their membership dues and join. We just went out and picked fights and made their lives better. It showed them that we were gonna stand up for them and that we'd be there when they needed us. And people went, "You know what? I think I wanna be part of that." Uh, that's what the union is, that's what our community is.
You know,
Do you
one
agree?
thing you mentioned picking fights, and one of the things that I've noticed a lot about what your rhetoric is that a lot of stuff about billionaires, corporations, and I work for More Perfect Union, and it's sort of part of the extended, I guess you could say, Bernie Sanders multiverse, and so we talk about that a lot. It's often not times partisan. It's class, right? It's not left or right. It's top or bottom, and I'm wondering how much that works. Like I live in New York City and I work here, right? We have a socialist mayor now, but I'm wondering, like, from where you're sitting, in a place where there is a lot of working class people, in a place where like it's not filled with like people with doctorates and so quote unquote elites. Like how does that work? Because I think Democrats are trying to make that argument that maybe they're not doing so great because they don't actually have the policies to back it up. But I'm curious how people connect to that versus the partisanship.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think that have opened the door to people being receptive to that. In a lot of it centers around energy and data centers right now.
Mm,
To talk about an oligarchy is almost an abstract term to somebody who's never seen a yacht or never
right.
been to a coast. We can talk about coastal elites. Uh, Outside of one trip to New York, like I think I was 38 before I saw the coast.
Okay.
So those abstract terms, they're great insults here sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily mean a lot. But what we're seeing now is data centers are popping up and they're coming in heavy. And then in retrospect, we had several giant transmission line projects come through our rural area, right? Which to us is something to be pondered on because we don't use a lot of energy here in rural Wisconsin, nor do we really produce it. That's starting to change with the advent of wind and solar. We are starting to produce some power, but that power is not being used here. We're pushing it on these high transmission lines owned by private companies and moving it to large cities. And now we're seeing data centers, and
Yeah.
they're
Pop up
it's
everywhere.
so rapid here, so rapid. Uh, People are just trying to figure out what's going on and get a handle on it.
It happens before they even know it, right? The state, like the city or county government will sign NDAs or give away some land or give some tax breaks, and all of a sudden, like they're building or talking about building just gigantic, like there's one in, I guess, in Utah that's going to be like bigger than Manhattan, right? Data centers. It's overwhelming, and like it's like aliens invading.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And people want meaningful local control and input and benefit, right? Like nobody wants a $3 billion project that benefits a billionaire. Uh,
Right.
there's empty promises that, oh, this will be the savior of your community. But that's where people have, I think, started to recognize that there are these forces at play, these people with massive amounts of wealth, and they're coming into our backyard and profiting off of it. And people are finally going, I think there's forces at play here that are out of our control, out of our hands, and we want to know what's going on. So when when people are going to the ballot box and they have to check yes or no, do you want to fund your school and raise your own property taxes? Or do you want to keep your property taxes where they are and possibly close your school, lay off teachers? When you're making that choice in the ballot box, and then a week later, you're seeing talk of a massive data center going in your district, people are going, what the heck is going on? You're
Yeah.
telling me that my community has to close the school that educates our kids. You're telling me that my neighbors are doing a brat fry to fund their kids' cancer treatment. You're telling me that the old lady who lives across the street can't afford groceries. But we just gave a $2 billion tax break to Microsoft and Meta to build their data centers. It's corporate welfare. And when you lay that out for people, suddenly it's in terms that they can see. You can physically see it. You can feel it. You've experienced it. And it's not just talking about somebody's yacht. Because I don't know what a $500 million yacht looks like.
Yeah.
We've got to this point in our society where we are so far removed from this mass wealth that we don't even know what it looks like.
It's
Historically,
hard to conceive of.
yeah. I mean, 50 years ago in our community, you lived within a block or two, working class, you lived within a block or two of the town's doctor, and the administrator, right? Like the nice house on the hill, like you still walked up there and conversed. You kids played soccer or softball with those kids.
Yeah.
But now there's just such massive economic inequity that we don't even see it. You can't even comprehend it. So you have to quite literally with people help have a conversation that makes it palpable, makes it something that we can understand and see and feel. One of the things that I think people really are able to grasp and connect with, we talk about Walmart. Listen, there's, I don't know, three, four billionaires in that family.
Mhm.
We subsidize Walmart twice, corporate welfare twice. We subsidize them when they move in and some giant corporate welfare property tax break to attract the business. And then we subsidize the healthcare for their employees because they don't pay a living wage. So we subsidize these billionaires twice. And I talk about it as corporate welfare. Everybody wants a tax cut, right? We all want a tax cut. I don't know anybody that says I wouldn't like a tax cut. So
Sure.
when they package a tax cut, uh, I think a lot of our voters are like, yeah, we should give a tax cut. But when you say, hey, we're giving corporate welfare to billionaires, we are subsidizing these billionaires twice. We subsidize them to build. That means our money that the working class pays in taxes, our money subsidizes the billionaires to build, and then it subsidizes their employees too. When you lay it out for people like that and say, "Hey, do you think it's fair that we're subsidizing these billionaires?" Well, at the same time, the ambulance in town can't leave the garage because it's not staffed. We literally can't fix the giant
Wow.
sinkhole in the street, and the number 2 well in town just went out, and we can't afford to replace it.
No. And you guys have data. You guys have they're building data centers. Like it I know Wisconsin's famous for Foxconn, right? Like the gigantic failed. Guess it was a factory. They gave billions of dollars for that. How much is that? I mean, how much? I worked on a campaign in Wisconsin for a while, a Senate campaign, and that was that was back in 2022. That was still a big deal then. And I'm curious, like how much do you think that changed opinions and like what are people looking for instead? Right? What are the things that people are like, hey, we want our money to go towards and like there's one thing to talk about what you don't want, and then you want to talk, but you got to also talk about like what you do want. And so, like, what do people seem that they care about most?
Yeah, public schools, is like issue number 1, 2, and 3 here right now because of all of the school referendums. So that's a great starter. Um, Past that, conservation's big and it's a hot topic right now. Like we love our public lands here, and I'm a huge advocate of public lands. Like I try to take off a week or two every year, and spend it out camping on the river, or I go out west and go elk hunting in the mountains, all on public land. And we've had a long history in Wisconsin of being very supportive of conservation. Earth Day started here. Aldo Leopold, the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Fund is our bipartisan, overwhelmingly popular supported land purchase trust. For the first time in decades, it's not funded. It's about to die. The funding runs out on June 30th or July 1st or something. And for the first time in decades, we have no available funding to purchase new public lands. Uh, and I mean, overwhelming support that program had. So we talk about that. We talk about how everybody deserves to have a park to take their kids to that is nearby in their community. We talk about clean water, which is like a right that everybody should have. You should be able to have clean water to drink without microplastics, without lead, without nitrates. Uh, Really, it's pretty simple, basic stuff. We want decent roads to drive on, and we want somebody to plow them when it snows.
Yeah. Do you feel like I mean, you mentioned earlier on that there's gonna be a lot of attack ads, right? Calling you, this other thing is a leftist, elitist, whatever it is. Like, this stuff like breaking through in the way that maybe it didn't a few years ago, right? Where so many of the ads in 2024 were just like about culture war issues, and you don't fault people for you know voting based on those things, especially when Democrats don't give them another reason to vote. But do you feel like I don't know, like Wisconsin could turn blue this year. I don't know if anyone cares about that. They just want things to get done. But like, do you think like that stuff is breaking through because of affordability or for other reasons? Like now people are starting to get more, I don't know, uh, focus on that.
Yes, I think people are much more focused this year on economic issues. But I mean, our district runs on diesel fuel. I mean, we got farmers in the field right now. Diesel at the pump is $6 a gallon now, which means
Jeez.
egg diesel has a tax break on it. They're not taxed, so they're probably paying $5.15 for egg diesel. Fertilizer's expensive. There's a really good chance that they're having more in inputs than they're ever going to get to sell their product. Uh,
Yeah.
that's breaking through. Uh, People are realizing that their kids, coming through 15 to 25 years old, those kids are never going to be able to afford a home. If there's one for sale in our area, people are realizing that their kids are leaving and they're not going to ever be able to come back.
Yeah.
And one of the things here, kind of a rural character thing is there's a lot of pride in having your kids have the opportunities that you had to be nearby. Uh, and I think that that's starting to hit home for people. We're realizing that the traditions are going to be gone. 7 generations of a family lived and farmed on this land next door, and they're recognizing like that's done. It's over. There's no way. Uh, so yeah, I think they are. There's still some people holding on to those culture war issues, but at the end of the day, you can argue until you're blue in the face about who's in what bathroom at the school. But when the school closes, nobody's in the bathroom and your
Yeah.
kids don't have school. And when you tell people that and you just let it hang there, I mean, if they're going to circle back to the culture issue at that point, uh, okay, I
Right.
can't win them all.
Right. Right.
Sometimes you just have to. I tell my kids, I got 2 daughters, they're 8 and 12. And our favorite saying around here, my favorite saying is, we all have choices, but choices have consequences. So if they say, Dad, can I? I said, well, you have a choice. Just remember that your choice has consequences. And that's, like, people just need to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Wisconsin since 2010 has been just under. I mean, there's been a Democratic governor, Tony Evers, for a long time, but like you said, power just kind of stripped from him. So he's only been able to do so much, and finally maps are changing, and that so give an opportunity for Democrats. But do you think that like the decade and a half really Republican rule has turned people off to some degree? Is it like they had to like experience that?
Yes, I think even taking Republican Democrat away from it, what those maps have done is made it so very few people have to run for their seats, right? We
Yeah.
have these people who've consolidated power and they're not accountable to voters. They do what benefits them, what lines their pockets, what benefits their billionaire donors. Uh, and that has absolutely turned people off to the process. People are exhausted. Nothing's changed for the better. Uh, Constantly showing up and turning out and doing the work, and then it's just more of the same. And people are exhausted. People are tired. I don't know what it's like to live in a place that isn't a swing district in a swing state. Like, we're inundated with these ads almost year round now. Like, our
I
election
bet.
season is perpetual. Somebody's always campaigning, and it's always the most important seat, and it's always, this is the one that we have to do to protect this, and it's exhausting. Like,
Yeah.
most people don't wanna be part of that. They would prefer that their government just existed quietly in the background and did things that, made their life better in a noticeable way, or at least didn't make it worse.
Yeah.
But everybody's tired of their life getting worse and having people point fingers and try and blame it on another person while they're getting a new Cadillac.
Yeah, and so in terms of it's there was a Democratic Party did sort of start reviving under Ben Winkler a lot in Wisconsin. Supreme Court justices have won, but you're in a place where maybe it didn't exist so much. I know it was a somewhat close election the last time around, so like there's some infrastructure, but trying to build a campaign that's a little bit different, right? Trying to build a campaign that reaches out to people who are rural voters who are maybe weren't engaged in the political process. Like you did it with your union, right? So you got people involved and engaged. Like, what was the game plan for this time around for your political campaign? Because that's if there's ever going to be any real change, it's going to have to come from the bottom up and in places where there's not really that much political infrastructure as it hasn't existed for a long time.
Yeah, the approach hasn't been that different. It's been identifying people that I know personally, that I trust, who also know and trust me personally, uh, and asking them to be trusted messengers. So what we've done is I have my maps on the wall. I'm starting to look at a map you can't see. Uh, we've taken small towns. There's these towns have 200, 300, 500, 700 people. And geographically, they might be 10 miles apart. So we've taken three towns and lumped them together into a group. And what we've been doing is, say those three towns is our canvas target for the week. So we'll go to Rui, Cobb, and Montfort, these three towns on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We tell people we're coming. Hey, I'm going to be, through social media. I'm not big on social media. I like to exist outside of computers. This is my first live stream. So
I'm honored.
uh, we tell them we're coming on Facebook is primarily where we exist because that's where our voters exist. We don't have a
Sure.
young college crowd. So we say, hey, we're coming. We go there. We take our pictures. We stop and eat at the local cafe, the restaurant, the bar. We have a beer when we're done. And every door we knock, we give them our lit. And on top of it, we staple a little piece of paper that we print out that day. Hey, I'll be back for a town hall at the community center, at the fire station, whatever, in a week. So every time we leave a door that we don't talk to somebody, and every time we do talk to somebody, we're leaving that. We're saying, not only am I
Mm,
here, talk to you, but I'm coming back. I'm coming back to you, to your town. Nobody's done that. Like,
yeah.
nobody. Mark Pocan, our congressman, does a fairly decent job of getting out and having a town hall style event. But to go to the smallest towns, I'm able to do because my district is 2.5 counties. But that's where we start. Attendance isn't overwhelming. It's 3 to 8 people at the town hall. But I tell you what, those 3 to 8 people, we've now had 2 points of contact
Yeah.
minimum, uh, at their door and then at the town hall. That relational organizing is invaluable. We can't possibly knock on every door out here. And when you do knock on a door, you have to build trust. But if I can get to that person, and this happens a lot, I go knock on their door and they say, "Yeah, I know who you are." "Well, great. How do you know who I am?" "Well, I saw it on Facebook. So and so shared it." Or,
Yeah.
"Well, I know, I see Dave. I seen him down at the feed mill and he was talking about you." That's how you get to people. That's how our lives exist out here. It's not It's not by door knocking. I mean, door knocking is important. Like, we're out knocking doors weekly. We try to get to a few hundred every week. But having coffee down at the round table at Grandma Mary's Cafe with the 7 old farmers who are in there every day, that's worth its weight in gold. They know what the problems are in their community. They know everybody in their community, and they're there talking to people all the time. So that's what we're doing.
And so, in terms of like they talk about what the problems are. I mean, there's you can look at your website and see what your issues and your priorities are. But like, you get to Madison, right? You win your election, and let's say that there's a Democratic trifecta, right? Which is very possible given the way things are broken up and which statistics are up for election. But in an ideal world, you have some power. So, what are the things that you want to make happen? Obviously, you talk about school funding, you talk about clean water. What are the other things that, like, I think Wisconsin has, because a lot of long time Republican rule and Scott Walker's austerity rule, there's a lot of things to catch up on. But I'm wondering what things that matter most to your constituents in a rural area, and what matters most to you.
Yep. Day one priorities fix public school funding and eliminate private school vouchers.
Yeah,
If you want to go to a private school, you should go to a private school, uh, but you should pay for it.
sure.
Full stop. So that's day one. Once that's accomplished, conservation funding is a huge priority for me. We've based everything in our state forever on user fees, meaning that the people who buy hunting and fishing license are the primary funders of all of our conservation projects. There's states like Minnesota and Missouri that have a really great conservation funding model where it's an excise tax, it's a sales tax, like a 0.02%. But they have citizen referendum there. We do not even have that ability in Wisconsin. So they
Right.
reauthorize those taxes for conservation funding every 10 years, goes on the ballot and has to be approved by the people paying the tax. So I would love to see both of those things. A ability to have a binding citizen led referendum. If your lawmakers aren't working for you and they're not doing the job, you should be able to get what you need on the ballot. That's how government should function. If it's not functioning, you should have a way to, you know, get your issues out there. And if it's popular and people want it, make it a law. I would love to see that come back. Uh, w- we need to fix healthcare. Uh, in our state, to the best of my understanding, Medicare expansion is off the table based on new rules at the federal level. We didn't take Medicare expansion early,
Right.
and now, the way I understand it, we don't really have the opportunity to go do that. But what we do have the opportunity to is we have a state healthcare system. I, as a state employee, have a decent healthcare benefit plan. There's no reason that we can't open that up, or our Badger Care program, which is our Medicare. No reason at the state level that we can't open that so that you, as a small business owner, you as a farmer, you as an independent contractor, why can you not get the same health insurance and pay for it? Why can you not buy into this plan that our state legislators get?
Yeah. It's a
There's no
public
reason
option.
offer, rather than taking it away for people, let's give it to more people. Let's open this up. We'll open the pool up. More people are paying in. Health insurers, and until a world exists where, as a country, we grapple with our healthcare problem at the state level, where I want to go to work, we have an opportunity to open up what we have and bring people in. And that, maybe more than anything, allows our small farmers and our small businesses the opportunity to go out and chase success. Because right now, they're just chasing away foreclosure. Every
Yeah.
single day, these businesses are trying to stay afloat. These small farms are just trying not to lose the farm. So when a green energy company comes calling and says, "Hey, we'd like to put a wind turbine on your farm," we all, like, we need green energy, but I want that property owner, that farmer, to have the financial ability to say no, thank you, if
Mhm.
that's not what they want on their property. I want them to have the financial ability to be able to say, that's not what I want. If they choose to have it, that's great. But I want them to have the financial ability and the opportunity for success. And I think that starts with healthcare and
Yeah.
offering those opportunities. At the same time, we have a really great retirement system for public employees. There's no reason, again, that we can't figure out how to open that up to our farmers and small business owners so that when they're 77 years old and they would like to pass on the farm to the next generation, and we've created an economy where that's possible and those kids want to stay in our community, I want them to be able to do that. So those are my priorities. I mean, there's other things that are, pet projects, I'm sure, but gosh, if we fix those three, I'll call it a career and I want to go back to work. That's enough
Yeah.
politics for me. If I fix those three or four things, I'm out.
I mean, I think I don't know. I hope you don't leave. Obviously, you've got something that a lot of candidates don't. And I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I see in the background you got a poster there: pro union, pro worker, pro freedom. I mentioned it at the beginning of the live stream. Um, that messaging I think is great. And I'm curious about the pro freedom part. What does that mean to you? Because that's a thing that the right has taken and hijacked and made their own. And I don't think they're faithful to the idea of freedom, but they've been able to make that their own thing. And so, what does the for you pro freedom mean? And for you to like clearly like actively, assertively take that back. Where did that decision come from?
Yeah, it's interesting. For anybody who missed the first part of it, I'm not ashamed. Well, kind of ashamed now to admit that I was a pretty reliable Republican voter for a better chunk of my adult life. And a big part of it was the perception that that was the pro freedom party. And you're right; they've absolutely co-opted that. And then now that they've consolidated power, seem to not care about individual freedoms. So freedom to me means you live and work in an economy where you have the freedom to do work that is satisfying and that provides you and your family with dignity without having to work three other jobs to pay for your health care. Having the freedom to have a dignified life without being a slave to a corporate welfare and in a system that rewards billionaires extorting our working class. It means everybody has equal freedoms, that we aren't constantly focused on women's rights, trans rights, workers' rights. Those freedoms should exist equally across the board to everybody. When the abortion care argument has been going on for so long, and we see on a conservative side, especially in rural areas, people talk about a castle doctrine, right? Like, castle doctrine means that if you're in your home and somebody crosses your threshold, you don't have a duty to retreat. You can defend your home. But we're going to tell women what to do with their own bodies?
Right.
Uh, it blows my mind. I want people to have freedom to make the choices on how they choose to live their life, who they choose to live it with, how and where they choose to go and sell their labor in a way that provides a dignified way to live. I want people to have the ability to work for a living, not get crushed working their entire life.
Yeah.
So that's what freedom means to me. And I want everybody to have the freedom that they want, not the freedom that I want for them.
Right. Yeah. It's such I think a potent message, right? This idea that like freedom has been co-opted by the Republicans, but also like this idea that like freedom is it's like a proactive thing too. It's freedom from both being subjugated, both like being told what to do, but freedom to be able to go do a thing, right? Like FDR, I guess, four freedoms, like be able to work but not have to like slave away, and being able to like get an education, that those sorts of freedoms, which feel like they've been sort of disappeared. But seeing that poster kind of reminds me of it.
Right on.
Well, listen, how can people, because I know we've got some people who are now inspired and may not live in Wisconsin, but how can people get involved, donate? What can they do to help your campaign?
Yeah. You can check us out. The website's Ben-Gruber, BEN-GRUBER, .com. Um, there's probably going to be some opportunities for phone banking and some of that kind of relational organizing. Donations are massively appreciated. My opponent is funded by two billionaires.
Mm.
almost exclusively. They write a $2.5 million check, and he doesn't have to fundraise. He works for them.
Jeez.
The Diane Hendricks, who funded Scott Walker, is one of his major donors in the U lines. Uh,
Oh, the big ones.
yeah,
Yeah, those are
yep,
the big kahunas in Wisconsin
yep,
conservative politics.
yep. So that's what I'm fighting against, and this race is pretty pivotal. It's widely considered to be the tipping point for control of the state legislature and the ability to undo some of the really shitty things that have been done in the last 14 years. So every $10, every $100 here is pretty profoundly impactful, uh, and it's obscene. The money that goes into these races, it's obscene. There's so many better things we could do with it. You'll never catch me believing otherwise. But unfortunately, you have to play the game to be able to try and change the game, and that's the world
Sure.
that we have to operate in. You know, you mentioned it earlier. We can't unilaterally disarm. And
Right.
gotta fight by the rules that exist. And if you win, maybe you can try and change them.
Yeah, and if you opt out, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Right on. You gotta pick the right fights.
But listen, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time. Much appreciated. This is really great, and we'll get it out to everybody in the newsletter and go from there.
Right on. Appreciate you.
Take it easy.
Solidarity.
Thanks, everybody.